Brian O'Driscoll on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in.
Yeah, of course, our rugby coverage here is brought to you by Vodafone. Team of us, everyone in. Brian, you're very welcome. How are you?
Yeah, really good.
You've been travelling the world, is that?
Yeah, well, Southern Hemisphere, yeah, down to South Africa on a 100k 4-day trek across the Drakensberg Mountains.
Right, yeah.
Which was
nothing
short of epic.
Was it? Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. Just a great time. It was tired. The first day was exhausting. They overcooked it a little bit, 34k up and down. Some people had to be rescued on horses. But over the course of it, it was kind of one of those rare opportunities you get to switch off, no phone.
Right.
And just conversation, and it's funny when you're in single file how much more people divulge rather than sitting around a table.
Confessional.
It is. It does. It feels like if you can't see them, if you can't see their facial expressions, what they're actually judging you about. Oh my God, I can't believe you're giving me that info. And keep going.
Yeah.
So it was brilliant. Really, really brilliant people, I have to say. And just good fun. And then we end up raising over $400,000 as well, which is no joke.
That's a good week.
Yeah, it was class. It was proper recalibration, and
Are you a
feel better
man?
for it. Well,
a little bit?
I wouldn't say it was soul searching. I hope I didn't need to search into my soul, but it was a leveler. It was a real leveler. It was kind of brought back to basics, all the tenting and camping and all that good stuff. So yeah, I'd highly, highly recommend it.
Right, very good. This game this weekend that everybody is very excited about because there's two attacking teams.
Yeah.
We need a good game, right? We just need a...
Yeah, listen, rugby can be played in lots of different ways, and there's, you look at Six Nations rugby, and yet it's lauded as some of the best rugby and the most entertaining rugby, but an awful lot of the time it's not the most eye-catching rugby.
Yeah,
it's attritional, it's hard, it's a winter sport, it's physical, it's atmosphere, it's great cities, it's all those parts connected, whereas rugby can also be, super rugby of yesteryear where you used to get, 70-50, and that's great. You can enjoy them as well. A couple of weeks ago, we had the attritional test match rugby in the Champions Cup final. This week, you'd be hopeful, looking at the attacking stats of both Glasgow and Leinster, that we're going to have a high score and we'll have end-to-end and great excitement and risk-taking and everything that goes with that. And you'd anticipate that it'll have to be high-scoring. I know both defences, particularly Leinster's defence, has been very strong, but Glasgow's strike rate, in 22 games, they've 16 try bonuses. That is remarkable, absolutely remarkable. And I don't know if that is in 16 victories. They probably lost some game along the way and scored 4 tries, but that is, that's the sort of stuff that you want, particularly at the end of the season. Maybe when we're ready to almost switch off, it would be great to leave that as a reminder as to what the Pro14 is capable of.
Yeah, totally. And the last time they played, it wasn't obviously Leinster's first team, but at the RDS it was 24 for Leinster, 39 for Glasgow. So they've already put some big scores up this season. I guess from Leinster's perspective, do you want the game to turn into one of those? Or do you try and close it down?
Well, Leinster still, they're not going to change tack. They're not going to all of a sudden become that pragmatic kicking team. They're going to hold on to possession, all the more so with Johnny back at 10 and back their skill set. But as Glasgow do as well, they don't kick the ball away. They're not afraid to play in their own 22. They really do play heads up, and I think with Adam Hastings at 10, he's someone that is exciting. He's of that Finn Russell mould where he wants to play with ball in hand. His kicking game's a secondary thought, which leads to the knock-on effect is the rest of his team have to play to his sort of game, which has gotten them to a final. So you don't ever change anything when you get to a final. In fact, you try and reinforce everything that you've done to get you to that position and just do it that little bit better. So I think both teams will try and starve the opposition of possession, be miserly when they do have it, and then the big ball carriers will more often than not be the difference. You think about Fagerson had a big game for them at number 8. last week against Munster. You look at some of the bench players that came on, that's, for Glasgow, and immediately George Horn and Peter Horn both had big impacts, albeit the game was over. So I think it'll be a big mixture of that test match intensity, because there'll be so many internationals playing, but also that element of looseness, that it's a hard ground, and the real case of jouer, go out there and express yourselves.
Leinster in a fairly unique situation for them in that they're rebuilding after the loss to Saracens, and they did really well, obviously, against Munster. So we should talk a bit about the fallout and what that's actually going to be like for them. They don't have any experience of losing a Champions Cup final and coming back to try and win a competition. Normally, it's like, can we put a lid on the celebrations long enough to carry ourselves through what's going to happen in the Pro14? It's a bit different for them, but they seem to have managed it so far.
Yeah, it was really interesting looking at the game. Obviously, I'd seen the scoreline as to what the end result of 24-9 it was, wasn't it, against Munster. But then not knowing and not having read any articles in advance of seeing that during the week to understand what type of 24-9 it is. 24-9 seems like a really good beating, but if you look at that first half performance where Munster threw the kitchen sink at them and would have been annoyed to have been, were they 3 points behind?
Yeah.
Because they had a lot of possession, they really owned a lot of the physical battles, but yet Leinster were able to soak up that pressure and then kick on to another 2 gears, I'd say, in the second half that Munster weren't ever able to live with. So it's nice from a Leinster perspective to know that they almost got rid of that tiredness and the fatigue, and they were able to take those punches in the first half and not be knocked down, and not find themselves behind a big scoreline, and then in the second half find a new energy to kick on. And I think that really holds you in good stead going into the final game of the season. This is what it is. There's no tour at the end of it. They're off on holidays after that. So it'll be a big focus for Leinster now, with the disappointment of their first Champions Cup final loss, to try and retain the Pro14, which I'm not sure what their record's like on that, but it hasn't been done an awful lot.
Yeah, tell us, what did you make of that Munster performance then? Because the fallout has been that essentially this team is quite far short now. That the gap in that second half is emblematic of the gap between Munster and everybody else in the top echelon of European rugby, that they can't pretend anymore to be challengers for the European Cup, because they're not. For me, nothing really changed on the course of just one half. I think huge credit to Leinster to be able to raise their game the way they did in the second half, but I feel the goalpost didn't shift just on the basis of that half. I was still a believer that they're a quarter-final, semi-final team. That's Munster, yeah,
are a quarter-final, semi-final team of Europe and of the Pro14, but ultimately, and possibly finalists in the Pro14, but ultimately at the bigger stage they're going to fall short against the more powerful teams. And I said it I don't know, a month ago or so, maybe after the semi-final against loss to Saracens. I genuinely believe that it's a front five issue, and
not a creativity of the backs.
There'll be that too, but you have to create the platform. And other than Dave Kilcoyne, who in fairness to him has had a pretty impressive season in ousting Jack McGrath and finding himself the number 2 loose head for Ireland, I don't think that they have that international calibre of tight five to get themselves the platform to allow Carberry and Murray and that back row to play themselves into the game and get Keith Earl with the ball with time and space. So I just think they're a little bit lacking, not a million miles behind other teams, but enough to separate them quite considerably from the top 3 or 4 teams in Europe. Because
it was a bit in the game where Kilcoyne makes a break, and it's like really like aggressive running, and he gets turned over because there's no one near him, and it's almost as if no one expected him to be able to do it. Or
in fairness, he's been doing that for the season, so I don't know whether that's thinking one phase too far ahead, or not playing heads up. I do think that they'll be assisted with a new attack strategy. I think they've got to look at something slightly different. I guess players like I think Farrell's had a good season. I think Scannell hasn't been at his best this year. I think he was probably better last year.
What did you think of
second
that?
Distribution? I don't know. Maybe maybe he peaked last year. I don't know. I haven't seen enough. Sorry, this is Rory Scannell.
We've had a good conversation about Rory Scannell. Alan Quinlan used the phrase that maybe he's had it coached out of him. That was his concern, and Rog thought that he is somebody who has a step and who you could definitely be getting more out of. And the wonder is it the responsibility of the player or is it the coaching staff? And that's the unknown for us.
I think they have to have more variety. It feels as though they're not as good passers or do as much passing as the better sides, as the Saracens, and they don't get the ball to the wings as often. I think you look at the two centres, Scannell and Farrell, yes, they're big units and they can carry over the advantage line, but they're both pretty proficient passers. So you've got to be able to, like we've seen Farrell with Ireland, that sleight of touch, you know, small little deft touches where you're anticipating carrying into heavy traffic and, you know, defenders bite in as a result, but, you know, he slips the ball away to a loop play with Carberry or somebody, or to Sexton or somebody else, or Stockdale and through holes. So, you know, that's in his game. I think you have to try and play to those strengths, and they do need to look to reevaluate their game shape, because against some of the lesser teams in Europe, maybe they were fooled a little bit by their Gloucester performance, and maybe that glossed over a lot of their season. It was disappointing Gloucester team on the night, and maybe that made you give you a full sense of hope as to what they were capable of. But ultimately, I think that's where they peaked over the course of the season. So they do need to have an ability to bring in, you know, play a more of a 15-man game. But sometimes a new, you know, fresh voice and new personnel coming in do that, and everyone feels the need to prove themselves again. You know, whatever about with, you know, Van Graham, but you bring in whoever it is, if it's a Rob Howley or whoever that might be. You know, no matter how old you are, you want to be able to prove that you're the best person for your jersey and that you want to sow that seed early.
Yeah, Rob Howley wasn't exactly uniformly praised after the Lions. There was a few people who had a few things to say about Rob Howley that needed some clarification afterwards, and then staunch defence from
I liked him.
Gatland, right.
I liked him. I think he's a really good rugby brain. I think he sees it well. He's exciting. He wants to play a free-flowing style. He'd be big on quality of pass, and like that was the thing under Joe Schmidt with Leinster, and again with Ireland. He wanted them to be the best passing team in Europe, and then again internationally. Whether they are or not is a matter of opinion, but I definitely think the quality of passers within the national setup has vastly improved on 5 years ago, and that's definitely been a focal point of Joe's. And I just don't know if other coaches see that as being as important an aspect. Of course, they'll say, yes, we do, but how much are you being drilled and how much pressure are you putting on your team at training to have that ball exactly where it's meant to be, not inside shoulder, not too far out in front, on the money every single time. And I think the consistency of the passing with Leinster and Glasgow over the course of the season, and particularly last weekend, for me that was the difference. It was ball out in front and gave the big ball carriers an opportunity to run onto it, get an advantage line, and the game becomes easier then. So I think that's a simple work on from any team's perspective. But I'm really intrigued to see where this Munster situation goes, whether they look internally or whether they look outside the box, or whether they're able to bring in some more bigger personnel, because they're just lacking. And the reality is, I don't think anyone can have any complaints with us here or anybody saying that they're a semi-final team, and that's why they've been at that juncture for the last 6 or 7 years, because they're just lacking a little bit of quality to get themselves over the line into a final and maybe win one. Yeah,
is John Klein up to it at this level? Because
I think he comes and goes. I think there's a lot of there could be a lot of great carrying and a lot of hard edge, but I think at times he can vanish.
Last week, case in point, first 20 minutes, I'm like, whoa, this is great. And then he gets taken off. And I hadn't actually seen him for the previous 20 minutes before that. Now, that's not just down to him. The whole pack is actually going backwards at that stage. But that's the point where if you're going to be an international quality second row, that you're going to step up and actually change the flow of the game somehow. But again, you're comparing John Klein in a Champions Cup semi-final to a Maro Itoje and a George Cruz. He's not in that conversation.
He's a good bit to get to that conversation. So you are dealing with a guy that maybe will get capped for Ireland and quite possibly will do, but is he going to get 50 test matches? No.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's what Munster needs.
So you need guys that are going to be seasoned internationals in your. That's why Leinster have been successful, because their team is predominantly internationals and not guys that have 3 and 4. It's guys that have 20s and 30s, and you know, you need more Conor Murrays in your side. You need more Keith Earls in your side, and I'd be frustrated if I was them, because
or
Peter O'Mahony, because they're coming, and Keith Earls is probably. Well, you know, he's defying age by the way he's playing at the moment, how exciting he is every time he gets the ball. But I bet he looks forward to getting into Irish camp, because he feels as though there's more likelihood of him getting the quality of service that allows him to express himself and to do the damage that he has done, whereas it feels as though it's just a little bit harder work, even though he's making a good fist of it. Yeah. It's a little bit harder work when he's in a Munster jersey.
Conor Murray is world class and is in his world class window at the moment, and the rest of the team around him are not giving him the opportunity to be successful. That must be unbelievably frustrating for him.
It must be, and it's not. You know, it's not just him. I think, you know, Peter O'Mahony's in that category. I think Farrell's beginning to get into that category. World class might be a step too early. But I would be very frustrated if I was them, because they've committed, you know, their long-term, you know, futures, and I was glad that I did in 2006 commit my future to Leinster, only retrospectively, because we went and won Heineken Cups, and it would mean way more to win European Cups and win silverware with your home team. But, you know, there's been nothing worse than thinking about committing, you know, your loyalty to your home team and ultimately coming up short, or maybe winning one Pro14 over the course of your career when you've that much talent. You know, certainly the names that we've mentioned.
Yeah, it's the 10th anniversary this week of yesterday. It was yesterday, Thursday the 23rd. Yeah. You were putting up very flattering pictures of Johnny Sexton.
Yeah, actually, that was from that actual day. So that was the first and only opportunity that for it to be justified. But yeah, it's never forget. Never forget.
He was a little bit plump at that stage. He had a little bit puppy fat.
The thing is, it's well, like, in fairness, you know, he comes back at me hard, and there's some pretty dodgy pictures of me out on the internet as well. So if you're going to give them, you got to be able to take them as well. And for my 40th birthday, he produced one that was one for the archives. But, yeah. Is it out there? It's on his feed. If you ever needed to pick me up, you go and have a look at that one. It's unbelievable. He's one of the best pros I know now. The consummate professional, literally only celebrates with success. Yeah. Diligent to everything he does. Nutrition phenomenal. You know, everything about him. You know, you would want the younger academy players looking at him and going, "What's the model pro?" So how at 23 did he actually in a Champions Cup final did he have that Pelican pouch? I was prone to one of those myself in my younger years, but that's because we didn't have that level of professionalism. But to see the Johnny Sexton now versus the one
he was using you as a role model, that would be his.
Maybe that was it. Maybe that. If he's getting away with eating Eddie Rocket, so can I too.
What do you remember about that day?
Just this huge relief, and I'll tell you what I do remember. I don't know if I've said it on the show before, where Johnny had that bit of a snap hook final penalty. You know, you could see from his smile afterwards, he didn't catch it clean at all, but he managed to draw in, and we went 19-16 up, and I was carrying a shoulder for the last month or two of the season, and into that Lions tour as well. So my passing game was pretty terrible from right to left. So it was just all about defending, and then the mentality when you get in the lead with 6 or 7 minutes to go. I remember I was part of winning the final turnover, and we all knew. I looked up and the clock had gone red. I was like, brilliant, that's it. So I went to grab the ball to kick it into touch, and Chris Whitaker grabbed me and was like, hang on a second, give it to Johnny, let's make sure this goes off the pitch. I was like, what? We're like 5 meters from the touchline, and you're not actually, maybe that's a smart move, knowing my kicking game. So I remember chuckling about it, but then that immediate, like, it didn't, knowing that we'd won, but then that sense of hearing the final whistle when you've won, after all the years of disappointment and all the abuse that we'd gotten and all the disappointment that as a collective we had suffered, to finally get to the Holy Grail was so important to us. And at least, a bit like the Grand Slam, at least we had one. But you quickly get over that, and you go, yeah, there's other ones to be gotten there. And unfortunately, in my time, we didn't get any more Grand Slams. We won another Six Nations, but to win 2 more European Cups within 3 years of that was. Yeah, it was really brilliant. But the first one is the hardest. It's like breaking the seal.
Yeah.
It's the first one is the most difficult, and then the pressure release valve is let off, and you're able to play with less.
Well, that was it. The team didn't play brilliantly in the final. You'd played brilliantly in the semi-final.
Yeah.
You'd ground out that quarter-final. Is that fair? You didn't play brilliantly? It was just like, it was a proper old-school arm wrestle. Yeah. It was that level of tension.
Yeah, and there is tension, and Johnny, knocked over his 50-meter drop goal, and I think it was a bit of a chess match. They had the European pedigree coming in, so it was Leicester, and the important thing for me was that Munster game wouldn't have been talked about as much if we hadn't gone and won the final.
No,
we had to go and back that up. It would have been, oh, you might have beaten us, but couldn't get it done in the final. And to beat Leicester as well, I think,
because Leicester had beaten Munster.
One of the hardcore, European superpowers, and maybe they were. It wasn't that 2001-2002 team of all those greats, those English greats, but they were still to be reckoned with, and they were still Premiership semi-finalists and finalists all throughout the noughties. So to get the job done against them made it extra pleasing. Yeah,
no, for sure. Sean O'Brien wasn't really part of that team, but he was part of the next teams that come, because obviously Rocky Elson was the star in the back row of that team. Sean O'Brien has officially played his last game for Leinster at this point, so I think we should probably take a minute to, because that's an amazing career he's put down. Yeah,
he was an exceptional player from very early on. I'd heard about him at UCD, and then he came into Leinster training, and I didn't, for the first week or two, I didn't really get what the coaching staff in UCD were talking about as this destructive ball carrier. And then I think I played a game with him, and I just, because he's not, now you look at rugby players and back rowers and the stature of them, he's not a particularly tall guy. Yes, he's well built, but there's this powerfulness that you just don't anticipate, and it's farmer strength. It's that raw strength that you just can't generate in the gym, no matter how hard you try. Someone like Victor Costello would have had it years ago. He was a good bit bigger, but he just had this explosiveness that made him impossible to tackle. Well, Sean had that, and his willingness, the hard edge that he had too, the nasty edge to go. He was someone to go to war with, and I love playing with Shawnee because never was there a backward step taken, and delivered on the big stage and big moments when there was an expectation. So
he made the team really quickly, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Because when Rocky was going, there was all this like, oh, what are Leinster going to do without Rocky Elson? It was like, well, not miss a beat.
Yeah. Yeah, and remember, that season that Rocky had, yes, it was one season. He must have been man of the match 14 times that year, and we're like, gosh, the best, he must be one of the best players in the world.
Yeah.
How do you possibly replace him? But then when you have someone like Shawnee, and at that stage it was 6, for him.
Yeah.
How do you get someone that can carry the ball like that? But he was different than Rocky. Rocky, was fast and cut really good lines, and was kind of almost an elusive ball carrier, whereas Sean was about making holes for you.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter. He didn't run to arms. He ran to chests, and was willing to. He almost wanted to put down markers with people that you're going to have to throw your best at me because I'm coming at your stem.
Yeah.
And if you can't knock me back and me coming at your strongest position, well, imagine when I'm going to get to your arms.
I do wonder if in retrospect somebody should tap him on the shoulder and go, that's going to result in you having quite a few contact injuries. Maybe you should aim for the arms a bit more.
Well, he started doing that in later years. I think you can see it in all older, wiser players. I think in Skulkberger, became a passer all of a sudden. Remember that crazy mop of blonde hair getting impacted, whereas now you just have to become this distributor and someone that has to evolve their game because you got to protect your body a little bit. But what an unbelievable servant Sean O'Brien has been. I hope he's as successful. I hope his body holds up over in London Irish. It's an attritional league, the Premiership. Everyone that goes over and says it, and you talk to Donegal, Callahan, or any of the forwards in particular that go over, and it's a week-on-week slog. Yeah. So particularly when they've come up now, they've managed to procure a couple of half-decent players. So you'd anticipate they'll be competitive, but yeah, the body will know all about it after 3 seasons of Premiership, considering what's already in the tank.
JP is, speaking of crazy mops of blonde hair, JP has helpfully dug out the 40th birthday.
There it is.
39,000 likes. Thanks very much, Johnny Sexton.
There's no digital today, right? We'll just talk about it. So, cut, well groomed. There we go. Thanks. 39,000 likes. Johnny, do you usually get about 1,500 likes with his posts? So 39,000. There's a few extras.
You're boosting his stats again.
Yeah, you're welcome, Johnny.
Was O'Brien the best teammate you had?
I loved playing with Shawnee. I like a night out with Shawnee as well. So we've got our 10-year reunion on Tuesday, but then the real one on Wednesday, where it's just the lads.
Double night, right?
Well, it's a night afternoon.
Rollover pain.
Night afternoon.
Kind of copy what you would have done in the mid-90s.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, we're Phoenix from the Flames. So, but Shawnee, great crack. Just a brilliant teammate and someone that I always had an awful lot of faith in, and just felt as though he was a teammate that would literally empty his tank every single time at training sessions and in matches. So we'll have a good laugh. I can't wait for next week.
With Rob Kearney probably going, although there's still talk that he might still stay. That's really the end of that team. Obviously Sexton is still there, but I think, is he the last one standing from that?
Dev Toner.
Did he play in the first?
He's on the bench in the first one.
Right,
yeah.
okay, wow.
Yeah. I don't think he came on. I think Mal and Leo finished the game.
Right.
But Dev with a full head of hair is in some of the photos. So that's incredible longevity from him as well. Unfortunately, he's obviously going to be missing the weekend. And Cian Healy.
Okay.
So there's a few. So Rob was on the bench. Johnny, Cian, and Dev was on the bench, but Johnny and Cian started.
That's an amazing career Cian Healy's had.
So and now he's just signed another 2 years as well. Like that, gone and forgotten. Around the World Cup 2015. What a resurrection from him, and just shows what a hard edge he has too, mentally and physically as well, to be able to deal with that level of punishment. So, I think it's almost like that. That Munster team of 03 to 08. That side that came through. But now hopefully we've got a new breed of that coming through. But we had that block from 08 to 13, 14. Had a few years of a sabbatical, and then hopefully we're going again with that. But it's some really great memories, and I think as well, because they're your teammates that you'd had the pain with, from 09. The first one was so important because a lot of them were your really close friends, and
some of them are at the end of their careers.
People like Shane Horgan, who missed out on the Grand Slam. For me, looking at his joy at the final whistle, that is worth watching over and over again. Literally for funniness as well, because it's, from his point of view, it's pretty cringeworthy that he really gives it some. He gives it the full Oscar performance, but it was justified because he'd missed out in the Grand Slam, and because finally he'd felt that 10 years of pain as well, and to get one, and then we won another one with him in the team 2 years later.
What's going to happen in the Pro14 final?
I don't know. I think Leinster are probably favourites just because of their European calibre. That said, obviously the fact that it's in Celtic Park, home city advantage for Glasgow. I think it's a very even match. I think for me, a big part of Leinster's focus will be about trying to contain Ali Price. His ability to manipulate the defence in and around the ruck, try and encourage the second and third defenders to bite in and then drop runners off. I haven't really seen anyone quite as good as it. The last person that was as good as that was Will Guinea, in his prime.
Wow.
Really being able to pluck players out, and I think he's very good. He does that little arcing run, doesn't run to them, he runs back and around and waits for someone to make a decision and waits for late runners to come off his shoulders. So they were very, very good, and they had a lot of success last weekend. And the try that he scored helped with Van der Merwe was brilliant. So I think they work hard for one another. I don't feel as though there'll be a huge amount in it. Stuart Hogg's last game for Glasgow as well. So
he's a great player.
Yeah, he's a loss to the Pro14. He's a great player. He really is. Very exciting. Things are going to happen when he gets the ball.
Yeah.
And so again, stop Ali Price and don't kick loosely to Stuart Hogg, and maybe stop Fagerson. I think they're three big focuses for Leinster, but I don't think there'll be a lot in it. But I'm going to go with Leinster by a score.
All right, good stuff. Brian, enjoy the game and the reunion. I'm sure there'll be plenty of videos doing the rounds on social media after that.
Locked in.
Yeah. Strict, hand your phones in at the door and get them back 2 days later. Right, you can get your rugby text, tweets and Facebook comments into us, and you could be named our Heineken Star Comment of the Week, and you could secure some cool prizes across the season. You could win yourself some matchday tickets and off-the-ball branded goodies. We're going to announce this week's winner tonight, so get your comments in right now.
Brian O'Driscoll on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in.